Hello, everyone. Okay,
Hey,
we're going to start soon. Um, okay, so welcome everyone. I am going to start this workshop today by reminding you that we had a series of workshops through the week. So the first one was about creating content. The second one was about LMS. The third one was about social media. And yesterday we talked about teaching with limited resources. I am just reminding you these because we have these wonderful workshops recorded in the US Embassy's YouTube channel. So if you didn't have the opportunity to attend to those workshops, you can go ahead and check them out again. Welcome everyone. Welcome Jeff and Juan Carlos. Jeff McElvenna is here all the way from New York, from Pace University. So we are very happy that this is our fifth day. A little bit sad that it's over, but we hope to have you again collaborating with us. So welcome, Jeff, and I hope everyone enjoys this workshop as much as I do.
thanks a lot. Thanks for having me. I'm happy to be here, and we saved this topic, the one about getting students talking, getting them to speak, more speaking practice. We saved it for Friday because it would hopefully be something fun at the end of the week, before everyone goes out and has fun on Friday night. I hear in Panama, so hopefully you guys will enjoy the presentation tonight. Usually, when I present on speaking activities, I present in a way that you can interact with me, and I have the teachers doing the same activities that I would have the students doing. That's not as possible today, so I'm trying a few different ways to get you guys to interact with me, and we'll see those. The first of which about interacting would be the WhatsApp group. Please scan this. We also put it in the chat sometimes. So feel free to connect to join our blended learning workshop on WhatsApp. We're keeping in touch. I just sent a video there welcoming everyone. So this will be a way to keep in touch beyond this week, and hopefully to start a new community of practice for all of you as well. I'm sending some tips there as well. There's a tip in there right now about how to change your group settings if you're a teacher, and how to toggle it, which we talked about a couple of days ago. So tonight's topic is speaking activities, how to get students talking, how to get them actually producing in not just a written way, but speaking, because writing is something that gives us a lot of time to think. We can analyze what we've written, but that's not as possible in speaking. So it's important that our students have a lot of speaking practice. So I'm going to break speaking activities into three different categories. Those are going to be number one, drills. And you'll see here we have kind of a silhouette of a teacher. That's because these are often teacher led activities. We'll talk more about them and what they are, but just as kind of an overview, this is where we get students to just practice personally the basic things, the basic words, the basic grammar, the basic vocabulary that we want them to get used to saying and hearing. Then we're going to talk about participation activities. This is actually what I'm going to spend the most time on, because I think you should spend the most time on it as well. And we'll talk about why and at what levels that is the case. But participation activities are ones where you can kind of push it off and get the students working together, get them working on something that's still based on the outcomes or objectives of your class, of your course, but it's having them actually think and apply concepts. And then we also have performance activities, and these can in a way be more summative, which we talked about way back on Monday. If you want to go back and watch that webinar, they can be more summative tasks, but they're the kinds of tasks where the students are preparing and sort of performing something. And it's also an important skill. It's one I'll focus less on today, but I'll definitely give you a few examples there at the end. So, with this in mind, I'd like us to start by getting you guys immediately kind of interacting with our polls. So, if you will, go to pollev.com/poll pace. Again, this is Poll Everywhere. It's a free website that you're able to use with up to 40 students. You can also take your phone and you can press or put it up to scan the QR code to get to our polling page. So once you're there, you'll be able to answer questions throughout the hour today. You don't need to close it. You can keep the tab open. You can keep the browser open on your phone if you want, and it will change as soon as I open a new poll here on the presentation. So to start off, I want to ask, what age students do you most often teach? So again, the URL is right up there at the top, pollev.com/poll pace. We're already getting some responses. Monica, you see them coming in? You're on mute.
I do, yes.
Yeah, yeah,
Let's
that's
see,
good.
we have comments here. We just have a few seconds of difference between our YouTube channels, so they should be coming soon.
All right, yeah, it looks like we have a lot of university teachers. Um,
We are. This is very surprising. I didn't know this.
yeah,
Well, we have my response there. I teach adults.
yeah.
I've never taught kids or teens before. I don't think I'm
Oh.
going to be very like patient with them.
No, I've taught students. The youngest students I've taught were second grade. But
Okay.
most of my career has been in university, and of course now I work at Pace University, so we deal primarily with adult students. One thing that's interesting looking at this poll and just thinking about it is the higher up you go in age, the greater the gap can be sometimes in ability. When we have young learners, elementary learners, when you're teaching second graders, as I know some people asked about earlier in the week, you, they kind of all have a similar range, a similar base knowledge, unless there's outside learning taking place. But the older they get, the more that gap can widen, and it can be more difficult. So it's good to see we have a range of teachers teaching a range of different ages here. So
Yes, actually, you have a lot of comments that they say that mainly they teach adults, but young adults too.
mhm,
So I think that probably 18, it's for them young adults. I see a lot of 18
right,
numbers here.
yeah, yeah, I see. I see. Yeah, and like that, fi- really the difference between 15 and 18 or 18 and 19, there's not a lot of difference there in language learning ability. It's more once they get older than that, even. It can be a little harder, as I know, trying to learn languages as I get older. It does create some difficulties there, but often it comes with more motivation too. So, what's good though is that the activities I'm showing tonight, they can be used at any level. They just have to be adjusted for whatever your students are able to do, whatever outcomes you have, objectives you have. All right.
Very
So let's
good.
move on. Yeah, I'll begin talking about, like I said, speaking drills. So speaking drills can be very useful in a class, particularly in a lower level class. Now, I say lower level, meaning lower proficiency level. That doesn't mean these are just for little kids. It doesn't mean it's just for, as I was talking about, students in second grade, but particularly when people are still learning about English, they're still learning to listen to it, they're learning to speak it, they're learning the sounds, the phonology. It can be very important. So that's kind of my first point here with speaking drills, is that it does build up individual and personal skills. It links listening and speaking in an important way. When we're reading and writing, we have more time to process information, as I mentioned a little bit ago. And when we work on drills, we can link that. I'm sure as teachers, we can all imagine many times we've asked someone, "Oh, how are you?" and just we hear back, "Fine, thanks." It's just an immediate response. It's a memorized utterance, as we'll see in a second, and that's okay. Those are building blocks that we're able to build on to some extent. So it's important not to forget those. And as I say here, it does practice memorized speech and utterances. Of course, we don't want this to be the only thing we're doing. And I'm going to talk about drills and where they fit into learning in a second. But it's important to have those building blocks there so that we can memorize vocabulary, we can learn appropriate responses, we can learn the pragmatics of the language and the way it's actually used, and grammar and how grammar fits in. It all plays together here. You can include grammar and vocabulary practice this way. I think that's often a focus for us as teachers because our students have to pass some kind of assessment, some kind of exam or project at the end before they can move on, or for even ourselves as teachers to prove that we have taught them the things that we were supposed to teach them. And those are often grammar and vocabulary based, as we know from teachers trying to get fluency into our students. And they can be teacher led or even student to student. You remember in my original slide there, I put a silhouette of a teacher because when I think of speaking drills, I'm always thinking more about me sort of leading an activity with the students answering back. And I may be calling on students individually, but they can sort of link that to another student as well. So I'm not going to get deep into this Bloom's taxonomy. I'm sure many of you have heard of, most of you have heard of, and that's not the purpose of tonight's presentation. But what I want to point out is that we have these foundational parts of Bloom's taxonomy. If you look at the bottom, we have memory and understanding, and these are important parts of learning a language as well. So I know when I was learning to be a teacher, I was taught that everything needs to be communicative. It needs to be exactly like they're going to be doing in real life, and that's true that we want to work to that. But I've learned as a teacher, and I'm sure many of you have as well, that we also still need the building blocks there. We still sometimes need those drills there to get them to automatically respond to something in the appropriate way so that they're no longer struggling with that and they can move up. So it's not our focus. It's not the end outcome. It's not the end goal, but it can be a part of that. So now I just have just a plain example, nothing fancy on this slide, no polls, nothing like that for this slide. I just want to show you exactly what you can do. If you are in your class, let's say you're on Zoom or you're on Hangouts, you could even do this by sending out a slide on WhatsApp or even sending out text, which I'm about to show you. But an example of a drill may seem very familiar once I show it to you. So if my main sentence is I am cooking dinner right now, my next sentence that I can show on the slide or that I can send in WhatsApp would be just blank you blank dinner right now. And we have a student respond to that. And then we start moving from student to student to student to find out what they say and to get them to fill in the blank. This is something you've probably done in class. I know I've seen it a lot in my teacher observations, particularly for low level learners. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's totally appropriate and it can help students to again make those links, those connections to link the listening and speaking. So if we get Sam to say, "You are cooking dinner right now," then we go next to Sam and we have Arthur, and Arthur then turns that into a question. "Are you cooking dinner right now?" And then you can just call on each student individually and get them saying it, get them linking that question or that concept that you're saying and get them to respond. So you can see how this can be very, very low prep. I put it on a slide here. You can put it on a slide when you're teaching online on Zoom or anything else. Or you can see also how this could easily be done right here on your cell phone, right here using WhatsApp or something else. Now, how would you get them to respond? Well, if you're on Zoom or if you're on Hangouts or something like that, if you're having a meeting on Teams, I know some of you said you were using Teams, then you can just do it right there live. If you're on WhatsApp, you can make them record a voice message. There are ways to get around it to where you're actually practicing speaking. The key, though, is trying to do it without too much lag time. We want them to be able to answer almost immediately. We don't want them to spend 30 seconds staring at it and thinking, oh, what can I say? Let me look at this. How do I do that? Sometime will occur, of course, but we want it to be as immediate as possible. So as you go around and you start asking different students in the class, maybe they're right there in different parts of your Zoom window here, then you can start changing it. You could say John is cooking dinner right now, and then have someone else turn that into a question. Is John cooking dinner right now? Kate and Ellen are cooking dinner right now. Are Kate and Ellen cooking dinner right now? We, and then the same. So you see how this can be a very low tech way of doing a basic drill. Now, am I going to do this for an intermediate conversation class at the university level? Probably not, because I would expect them to already know these concepts. This is for the level where they're still learning these concepts, and we want them to get that base. Remember the Bloom's taxonomy, the base remembering, understanding level, so that we can then build into more participation activities. You can also do it very easily with vocabulary practice. It doesn't have to be grammar. You can use visuals of whatever vocabulary you've been going over in class. You can ask the students, hey, I'm going to put up a picture of something. I want you to tell me about it. So I start with this. It looks like I have a car, a very nice car. And I ask the student to quickly tell me something about the car. Now, of course, if they're just learning this vocabulary and you're teaching very young learners or very low proficiency learners, it may be enough for them to just utter that that's a car, and that's okay. Now, if we're teaching higher level learners, maybe they're a little older, or maybe their proficiency level is a little higher, you can then easily ramp that up to have them make a sentence about it. But what's key here is that we want to start making it very fast. So I have Tom answer something about this, and then I ask Susie, what is this? And she has to give a sentence about this. And then I ask Brian about this. And then I ask Nicole about this. And then I ask Ryder about this. The point is to get it going very, very fast, as quickly as we can, as quickly as we need to for the students to get it. Let the student know before you bring up the picture. Let them know that you're calling on them first. You say, hey, Ellen, and then she sees it and she has to think very quickly on her feet what she's doing. She might say that's a horse. She might say the horse is running by the water, or the horse is enjoying the sunset, whatever it is. And the point is finding ways to get them to speak based on something visual, something they see, and something that you ask them. And then again, we can go through. The faster we can do it, the more effective the drill will be for the students. Here's another very basic one. We've just got basic comparisons here. Don here and Tom. Just give me the comparison. I can call on students very quickly and get them to compare it and say, Don is taller than Tom. Tom is shorter than Don. Don is older than Tom. Tom is younger than Don. These kinds of things. Again, the key is to get them started on this so that you can build up to using these in this case grammar objectives or vocabulary in some other participatory context. So when I talk about these drills, I want you to know that they are important, but that's not all we want to do. You might spend some of your time on this. This is the building block to then move on to something else, depending on the level of the student. But I want you to know that it is okay to do these. It is not a bad thing to do something just because in real life they might not have that blank that they have to do. They are going to have to figure out appropriate adjectives and use comparisons and superlatives and things in real life. So it is appropriate to use. So next I have one that I think it sort of goes from drills toward participation, a participation activity. So you can think of drills in ways sort of like I said, where you're asking students and getting some sort of response back. There's not a whole lot of analysis involved in drills, although there can be some application involved, like we saw with the grammar or the vocabulary objectives. But here, if I just tell the students that my stomach hurts and I want to know what I could do or what I should do, just basic modal practice, I can easily do that in an online session and get the students actually talking using the same method that I mentioned before. I call them out by name and I ask them, hey, Brenda, my stomach hurts. And she responds, whoops, looks like I lost my thing. Oh, there we go. I got something left from yesterday. You should not have eaten all that ice cream. You should not have eaten all that ice cream. Or you should you should drink some gas water, or you could rest for a while. What's important here is that we're using the modals that they've learned. We're using whatever it is they're doing. And again, we are teaching to the middle. We're accommodating the lowest access, like I sort of mentioned yesterday. But we want them to think about it in the way that you would think about advice or something like that in real time as well. We don't always know that our friend's stomach is going to hurt, you know? So what we've got to do is we've got to do it as we're going along. And that's what we want them to do. They don't know when we're going to call on them. They're sitting there thinking, oh no, what am I going to say? What am I going to say when they call on me? The point is to get them that practice and drill them into it so they have to come out and say it. All right. So the last thing I said was sort of transitionary from drills to participation. And this I feel is a much more middle road participation activity. I call it speed pairs. A lot of people do this in class. I like to use this image in training so you can see what it would look like in person, where you've got one row on the left, one row on the right, and then they're sort of facing each other and you're giving them a task that they have to do together. Online, it's a little different, of course, but it's still important because, again, you can practice grammar constructs and vocabulary. That's very important to practice grammar and vocabulary, but you're doing it in a way that is much more student driven. You're getting them talking to each other, which is important more so than me talking to them or them talking to you, for example. So for this, to put them into pairs, which I think is best for this activity, we're going to do one a little bit later with groups. We want to use small breakout rooms if you have them. Since I use Zoom to teach, I use individual breakout rooms. They're useful, But even if you're using something else, you can use chats on WhatsApp, on Telegram, on Signal. You can find ways for them to get together and talk. And that's the point, is that we want to find some way that they're together and you can join that or you can hear that if they're even just using basic video voice recordings. I mean, that's okay. You, as long as you can listen to it, and the key is on the speed. The focus is on the speed. What's great about doing it in pairs is that each student is talking 50% of the time. So if you think about a full classroom, let's think about those drill activities I was talking about. How much does any one student talk? Not very much. Any one student is talking maybe 1/20th of the time, for example. But when you can put students in pairs like this and you can have them work in small breakout rooms or individually on chats and voice messages and responses, then suddenly that goes way, way up. They're no longer talking 5% of the time or even 1% of the time. They're then talking 20, 30, 40, 50% of the time. And the more we can get them talking, the better they're going to be at it. And the more they're going to learn whatever our objective or outcome is. So, our objective or outcome may be the grammar construct, it may be those comparisons we talked about with Don and Tom, but the skill we want to build is taking that grammar construct and putting it into speaking. So it's not enough that they can just learn how to do the grammar construct. We want them to actually apply it in both speaking and writing. We give a lot of practice to writing, especially when we're online, asynchronous, but we want to use all the time we can to give the practice to speaking. So, with this in mind, I do want to do another poll. So, if you will, just open up the poll that you were doing earlier, whether it's on another tab or on your phone or somewhere. Again, the URL doesn't change. We always do pollev.com/poll pace, and you'll be able to see it. So, before we do that, you're going to see the poll is a part of this. I want you guys to look at this picture. Just look at this picture. Think about comparisons. Imagine you are in a breakout room. Monica and I are in a breakout room maybe, and we're looking at each other. We're looking at this picture and we're trying to find ways of comparing these two people, right? So I'm not going to give you any examples, but what I want you to do is think of how you might compare these two people. Think of several ways. And then, of course, if we were actually in person, this is the hard part, Monica. If we were in person, I would have you start talking and saying, but instead, what we're going to do is we're going to do it this way. So, you saw the picture there. I want to know, what are some comparisons between these two women? So, you saw two women there. What are some ways that you could compare them? And then you can vote on answers below also. So if I get on here and let's see,
Age. Yeah.
age, yeah, hair, anything else? So as we start to get more answers here, more for age, we'll be able to look at the way a lot of people are responding here and seeing experience. That's something that I wouldn't have thought of, but it's good because it would get more into higher level vocabulary, higher level comparisons. Let's see, color of clothes. That's good. You could talk about clothes that are darker or lighter or trendy or not trendy. It looks like we have a lot of people doing age, hair, um, anything else? Fashion, clothes, experience. And then we have some people putting the full comparison in, which is fine as well. other physical characteristics. So the point here is that you could take one picture and, depending on the level of your students, get them all speaking using the same concepts that you're writing here in our poll, and getting them to say, the woman on the, which one was younger, Monica? I think on the left, the woman on the left was
Left.
younger, if I
Yes.
remember right. Yeah, I don't have the
Yeah,
picture
she
now.
was way younger.
Yeah, so the woman on the left is younger than the woman on the right, right? Or the woman on the right is older than the woman on the left, and so on and so forth. So the key here is making sure the students know what to do, making sure they have the appropriate vocabulary. Hopefully, they will. We see some examples here that are higher level vocabulary, some that would be, quite easy for even the lowest level learners. And so I want you guys to think about how you can do this in your own class using visuals. So we're going to look at some more examples. I wanted to spend a little more time on the first one though. So let me move on and show you another one. So now we have cars. So let's see. On the left, uh, an okay car. On the right, a much nicer one, I think. But again, what I want you to do is look at it and imagine you're a student now. Imagine you're a student. You're in a room with just one other person, the way Monica and I are. And what are ways that students might be able to compare these and do that in a way that they're actually speaking? Now, right now, we're having to use writing just because of the way a webinar works, but hopefully you'll be able to then use it with students in speaking activities as well. So with this done, I'm going to quickly change to a different poll. So now we're going to do a new one. The same thing though. The same idea, just a different poll. So if you have it open right here, you should be able to start responding and see how might you compare these two cars.
Yeah, they're saying speed, size.
Yeah. Speed. So I see on the screen now, some people are talking about the cost of the car, how expensive it is. You could say expensive, cheap, the color, um, model, things like this. So basically, I think you see what I'm getting at here is that the key here is to give them the autonomy to think of their own ways of doing these comparisons, right? If we can come up with 4 or 5 different comparisons just ourselves in, 25 seconds, I think it's been, your students will be able to do that as well. And one student can say one comparison and the other can say the opposite. And then that other one can start with a different kind of comparison. Maybe the first one talked about size, maybe the second one talks about the price, the third one talks about the speed, things like that. So the key is giving them some sort of visual clue and then letting them take it from there and moving on. All right, let me move on. So, whoops. So, this is going to be similar the way we're doing it, although we're not going to do the same type of poll. But this is another participants type of activity, participatory activity. So here we're just going to look at the comments. Monica, you can stay on and look at the comments, or I can look over at them. But what if you just had a picture like this? And you put the students into breakout rooms. What are some of your objectives or your outcomes for your class? Maybe it's grammar, maybe it's vocabulary, maybe it's something else that you might use for this picture. Let's
They can
see.
talk about their hobbies.
Yeah, that's good. So we can guess that one of her hobbies is music or playing guitar, and then that can lead into other hobbies, right? If we're looking at grammar, we would be able to talk about things like What is she doing? She's playing the guitar, she's sitting on the ground, she's looking off to the side, right? Things like this. And the point is to I always try to find images for this when I'm trying to open it out and use more objective based speaking, objective based participation in ways that the students have to actually use what they're learning. I try to find action type of images here.
Pictures.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's important. Obviously, when we're doing comparisons, we just have two pictures, two comparisons. But for this, I really try action pictures, action images. So I see in the comments here, I switched over just to see some of them very
Yes.
quickly.
Present continuous, descriptions, careers.
Mm-hmm. Careers, yeah, that's a good one. I didn't even think about that. Um, she's writing a song, things like that. So if you could do this with your students, just imagine how much and how quickly they would be able to come up with different ideas, especially if you gave them some sort of idea, like, what is she doing, or what are they trying, or things like that. So with that said, I want you to think about this now. Keep that in mind, what I just talked about, and now look back at Bloom's taxonomy and see how it's a little different than what we were looking at before. It's no longer just that sort of drill practice like we were doing in the beginning, where they remembered something or where they were automatically responding to something. We're now moving up a little bit. We're just showing them a visual image. We have two students, they're working not side by side anymore, but they're looking at each other, sort of like they're in an in-person conversation, just via Zoom or Hangouts or something now, but they're actually having to apply the concepts that we use. So remember, what I said is our objective is always that aspect. We want them to use their vocabulary. We want them to use the grammar. We want them to use all of the content that we're teaching them, but we want them to use it within a skill, within speaking. So we start to move up on Bloom's taxonomy there and get more into applying the language, sometimes even analyzing pictures. So for example, another example, we have this one. We have a woman here. She's looks like she's roasting something, turkey, I think, yeah, or a chicken. I'm not sure. So we've got another picture. Like I said, what I prefer to do is to choose images that are action images that sort of tell a story, and then maybe that then leads into another objective. Maybe you're in a writing class, but you still want to practice speaking, which, by the way, you should. I believe you should do all four skills in every class, even if it is designated as a single skill class. And you can use these kinds of pictures as a starting point and start a chain reaction. Let's say you're in a breakout room and you have two students there, or even expanding it more, you could begin with what we just did, where maybe it's a very simple sort of present continuous, present progressive sentence, but then we start thinking, oh, well, what happened here? And then getting the students to build on that. They can actually build out a story. You could pull it out of a breakout room, get back into your full synchronous room together if it's possible to do that. I know it's not for everyone, but if you can, start a sort of chain reaction here where one person says a sentence and then another student has to follow up that sentence. The key here is making sure they're actually speaking, making sure they're actually having to use their English, speak it. It's not just all in their head, that they're hearing and listening to it as well, because that's the way to really build those blocks so that they can understand these things more intuitively as they go through. Here's just another example. We don't have to go through all of it, but again, the same thing. We have an action image. We have people playing baseball here. There are all sorts of things you can do from that. The reason why I call it breakout fun regarding breakout rooms is because I want you to remember that 50% number that I told you early on at the beginning. Remember that the 50% is what we really want to get at if we can. So the smaller the group of students doing something, the better it is, because the more likely they're going to get to that 50% talk time. We're never going to be at 100% because then our students are just talking to themselves. But if we can get it 50-50, meaning one student and another student talking an even amount of time, then we're really focusing on their speaking and listening skills together. If you expand it out, if you have 4 students in there, obviously that speaking time is going to go down, but it's going to be better than if you have 10 students or if you have 15 or 20 students in one place. So organizing them into smaller groups is important. I've mentioned here breakout rooms, but remember when we talked about teaching with social media, we talked about using WhatsApp for people who are using that. You can always make smaller groups. You can always make um, smaller rooms, if you will, depending on the platform, so that students can get more of that speaking time. It's just how are they doing it? Are they doing it over live chat like it would be on Hangouts or something? Or are they doing it through voice recordings? As long as they're doing it in some way, it's a lot better than if they're just reading from papers or reading websites or worksheets. So, with that done, let's move on to another poll. Let's see what you guys are thinking here. I know all week the word cloud polls have been kind of the most well liked, I would say. So I wanted to do one here at the end of the week. It's not the end of the presentation right now. But I want you guys to give me 1 or 2 words about what you could practice with visual images in your online class. So, one we saw earlier in the chat was present continuous, but I'm sure there are other things. There could be grammar, there could be specific vocabulary, but what specific vocabulary might you use? That's what I'm wondering. And let's see what people have to say. Right, vocabulary is the first one coming up there. Comparative trips, that's good. Talking about travel, that can bring up both travel vocabulary and different kinds of grammar, different kinds of structures, ideas like that, descriptions. Let's see what else comes up while I get some tea. You're muted.
Sorry. Yeah, the food is a good one.
Yeah, where
Um,
we saw that with the woman who had, it looked like burnt her turkey or something.
yes.
Superlatives,
House
prepositions.
vocabulary. That's a good one.
Yeah. So I like these word clouds for something like this because, when I choose an image or when I make a slide, I have a few ideas in mind, but you guys have way more ideas. When we all come together, we kind of crowdsource our ideas this way so that we can see what other people are thinking. And maybe you can look at the word cloud here and it'll spark something else in you. Oh, yeah, well, I could do that. Or I could work on conditionals. And how could you work on conditionals? What types of visual images could you find in order to get conditionals? And we just start working our way through it. You know, I always think of the classic condition. If I were rich or if I won the lottery, you could easily use visual images to prompt those kinds of sentences from students. So it looks
Yes.
like we have a
And
lot coming through now.
Serina's also adding here feelings, and she's
Definitely.
also saying adjectives. Very good.
Yeah, yeah. I like both of those, and they can be
Well,
very
feelings is
useful.
also coming. was a big one here.
Well, yeah, yeah.
Storytelling. Pictures are great for that too.
Yeah, exactly. Like I said, work on that chain reaction there. If you're doing stories, depending on how talkative your students are, it could work in pairs. I personally I find that it works better with 3 or 4 students so that one student can make a statement, one student can state a sentence, and then you start that chain reaction. Another can work off of that, and then another can work off of that. You can end up with a good story. You can end up with a lot of funny stuff as well. Students like to be funny and things like that. But what most importantly, what you end up with is collaboration in language learning. And collaboration in language learning is what really helps it to stick, I think. All right, so let's move on. I've got a few more examples here before we go. I would just watch this word cloud move all day long, but we can't, unfortunately. You can still watch it for a little while though on your phone. So another thing that I like to do for participation activities are spotting the differences. Those of you who are in the chat, feel free to state what you see here. Maybe you see some differences already. There are literally thousands of these types of images online. And that makes it, in my opinion, a lot easier to do online than if we were even in person. So find and display similar images from the internet, like we see here on your screen. Students can work in breakout rooms to point out the differences. Again, the smaller the group of students is working together, the more they're going to be talking. So that can be very useful, putting them in small groups. Doesn't have to be pairs necessarily, but the smaller, the more talkative they're going to have to be. So for example, here, students must use there is or there are, I should say, to describe the differences here. So I don't know. I was just going to check the comments real fast to see if we have any ideas. What do I see? You can see the person here is wearing different clothes, shorts and a shirt versus it looks like some kind of little dress there. So think about what students would be able to practice with this. They're not just having to examine it themselves, but they're having to then change that into the target language, in this case into English, and do it that way. So it's true probably for this. At first they're going to process it in their native language, but then they can move it over and find a way to say that in English. And if they don't know it in English immediately, they're much more likely to remember it when you tell them or when they look it up, because they've now attached it to some kind of visual. So let's look at some other examples here. There are lots of them. I just chose a few. So here we have, let's see, we're in London right now, it looks like. You can look at it and see some of the differences. I see one very clearly up at the top left. There's a very clear difference there. Obviously, these pictures are from slightly different angles the way they're done, at least on the screen here. But again, you get students thinking about it, you get them looking at it, and hopefully using vocabulary that you've taught them or vocabulary that they've learned before, and finding different ways to say that. Let's say you're learning how to tell time. One very quick difference here is the difference in time on the clocks here. So you'd be able to have them say what time it is on the left and on the right. Here we have Mona Lisa and differences here for Mona Lisa and what she's doing or not doing and whatnot. You can spot the differences there with her. Um, let's see. Here we have some fruit, bowls of fruit. Have them look through these. So obviously we're not going to spend a ton of time doing all of these different images. I would love to though, if we were all in person, I'd love to spend at least a few minutes on each of these and see what you all could come up with and think of ways that you might be able to change this fun activity into something that would target the outcomes of your course and help the English ability of your students. And that's really the key here. I'm just giving you ideas, things that I found that hopefully will prompt you to go look up the same. As I said, there are literally thousands of images like this where you have two very similar, basically the same image with a few differences, and the students can work to spot them. All right. So, this is kind of the last participation thing that I wanted to talk about. More breakout fun, as I called it, is 10 things. This is something I read about years ago in American English Forum, which is an academic publication by U.S. embassies, or available at U.S. embassies all over the world. And it's something I've used for years since then. So in this case, since we're online, the students break into those breakout rooms, into those group chats, whatever we can do to get them into smaller groups. I don't use pairs for this. I always have more. I always have maybe 4 or even 6 students, and then I give them a new topic. If I'm on Zoom, I will send it by broadcast message if they're in different rooms. If I'm on WhatsApp, I'll send it to our big group chat, and then I have smaller chats, smaller rooms that they can then send their voice messages back and forth to, similar with Hangouts. But I send a new topic, and what do they have to do? They are supposed to find 10 things, or state 10 things in that topic. I'll show you an example in a second. So what I do is that they come up with 10, I don't know, let's say transportation, and they come up with 10. They come up with planes, trains, automobiles, horses, boats, whatever. But I only give them credit for the ones that are unique. So if I have 3 groups, I take them all and I mark off the ones that are repeated, and they get credit for the ones that are unique. So if one group has 3 that are unique, one group has 1 that is unique, and one group has 4 that are unique, the group with 4 wins. So what do I mean by topics? These are ones I've used for a long time. What are 10 things that come in pairs? Now, of course, students could be writing this down, but again, I use these as speaking activities. I want them talking. I want them using it. I want them trying to think together. What are things that come in pairs? So we have shoes. We have what else? We have I'm looking around at things that come in pairs. I'm not even sure right now. We have all of these things. We have things that move fast. So we had those cars earlier and airplanes, but it doesn't have to be transportation related. You could have cheetahs and whatnot, things that fly, things that are invisible, things that swim, things that fit together. That's always a difficult one. I don't always get to it in class. But these are just ideas of what you can do for topics. You can find your own topics based on what you've taught, what you know the students have done before. I like to do things that are based on current events or something that's in the news now. And the point here is getting the students speaking very quickly off the cuff, getting them working together. Because it is so fast, they don't have time to think about it and write it down. So that time element pushes them to use more speaking, use more of those skills that we're trying to target, so that they can all work together as a team and maybe win. What they win is up to you. Usually, I don't have anything, but hopefully they enjoy just winning. Most students do. 10 things people grow and use batteries. You feel free to use this list if you want, but you're probably going to find better topics that you can use in your own class. Okay, so I said that at the end I would talk about performance. So the third category of speaking skills I mentioned was performance. First, drill. Second, participation. That's where we spent most of our time getting students working together. Performance, these are the kinds of things that the students have time to prepare, they work on, they do it in a more formal type of way generally. And so, some ideas for this, for example, role plays or playwriting, you'll notice if you look at the examples here, these are things that might actually work better in an asynchronous environment, at least for some of them, such as the role plays or the video recorded content, things that can be recorded and put up so that students are getting some kind of speaking practice, even if you never have any synchronous time. If you do have synchronous time, you can do role plays or playwriting where students are given a role and or given two roles and they have to come up with some sort of story or idea. But you can also have them do live presentations. Sometimes impromptu presentations are more of a participation type category, but live presentations can also be performative in a way where they've practiced it over a long period of time. You can focus a lot on presentation skills, sitting upright, doing all those things, looking at the camera the same way they would look at the eyes of people. It's a good skill. Debates, students love debates, very good for synchronous learning, but again, it requires a lot of preparation beforehand. It's something that they really have to prepare just as they would a presentation. It's just a more formal and interactive way of doing it. And video or recorded content is also really useful, especially in today's world where this is a major skill that a lot of our students will be doing as they get older and as they join the workforce. This is a very valuable skill. So, including it as part of our language learning can be really useful. But you'll notice how all of these things are a little bit higher level to some extent. It doesn't mean they have to be. Role plays don't have to be very high level, but some of the others can get to be much higher level. But it doesn't mean that we can't do it, that we can't try it at all levels. And it's important to understand that performance is an important part of what we do when we speak. But again, it's not the only part. So we don't want to only do presentations as our speaking practice. We want to have a mixture of everything with a lot of focus on participation type strategies and, drills for those lower level learners. So, our last poll before we go, we're almost done here, is right here on pollev.com/poll pace. Again, if you've got your phone open, it'll be right there. Um, So tell me, we want to know which activities are you most likely to implement? So I sort of went through a lot today. I pared it down a lot. I could have done double this, but I wanted to at least talk a little bit about each of them. So which activities are you most likely to implement based on some of those that we talked about today? And you can see it's changing as more people start answering
It's
the
very
poll.
dynamic, this table here.
Yeah, definitely. I gave examples of each of them just so you understood what the category was that I was calling it. But obviously, you don't have to use, for example, a Mona Lisa photo. Although that's a good one. I like that one and you should use it, but you don't have to always use it. So, yeah, it looks pretty even actually. It looks like people like all of them with again though a lot of those participation category, those are the ones that seem to have more interest than the others, and that makes me happy because as I said, that's where I want you guys to put the time. We all have limited time, so put your focus there if you can. All right, so anything from the chat, Monica?
Yes, that actually it's very hard to decide. They love the activities and they are asking when is the next workshop going to be?
That's a question for someone else. Up
Yes.
there, up there.
Yes. They're very good. But if you see the picture here, it's very dynamic. I think it's even like one of the categories, grammar ones, photos. They're
Yeah,
very
yeah.
popular.
Yeah, I'm glad to see that. I think it's important to understand that all of these can be useful in the right ways. The problem is only when we put too much focus on one category over the others. Particularly, if we have low level learners, we can put too much focus on the drill type activities. And with higher level learners, we can often put too much focus on the performance activities. So if we keep those categories in mind, we can really work around that. But I see here we're at 7, so let's move out of the poll here. Well, if it'll let me out. There we go. Now it'll let me out. So let's get out of the poll here and just remind people how to get in touch with us. The WhatsApp group is still there. As I've said all week, you're free to connect with me, ask me questions on my Instagram or LinkedIn, but also be sure to follow on YouTube, the U.S. Embassy Panama. We've had a lot of likes this week, I hear, which is good. A lot of followers. So, any final words here, Monica?
Yes, actually, they're saying that thank you for sharing those great ideas that they loved to have specific activities that they can do and that they are going to implement them in their classes. Um, it was a fantastic list to get them talking. Excellent.
Good. I'm glad that was useful, and I hope with everything that we've done this week, I hope I always made it clear that I've given examples, but you don't have to go out and find the exact photos that I use. You could use ones based on what you're doing, and I tried to do that all week to make sure you can understand the overall concept and how you can take the concept and apply it using whatever you're trying to teach in your class.
That's true. That's true. And also for everyone that's listening, I shared many times the WhatsApp link in the YouTube channel comment section. So if you cannot scan the QR code, you can go ahead and copy paste it or just click on the link that I posted so you can keep in touch with Jeff, us, and the US Embassy.
Yes, yes. We look forward to seeing you guys. I've already posted a couple times today, a couple of things. So we welcome you to join that so we can continue this sort of new community of practice moving on as our week unfortunately ends this week.
I know it went very fast, super fast. I
Yeah,
can't
it
believe
did.
it's already Friday.
Yeah. But
Well,
thank you
Jeff,
to
I
everyone
think
though for coming though. I'm glad everyone came on Friday.
I know, and there are some places in Panama that's raining a lot. So I was scared about that bit because when it rains here, in some places we lose electricity and internet connection. But we had a lot of viewers, so that's excellent. And you're receiving a lot of love in the comments section. So they say it was a wonderful week, wonderful webinars. They're good. So I think you helped a lot of teachers and future teachers.
Well, I'm glad to
Lots of
hear.
love here.
Yeah, that's what I'm here for. That's what I like to do. So I'm glad to hear that.
Well, that's excellent. It's 6:04, so unfortunately
Yeah.
we'll have to say goodbye. And I'm so used to say see you tomorrow, but and this time I can just ask you to please join the WhatsApp group so we can be in touch. Also, Juan Carlos is going to be sending you a forms so you can complete it with your information, and we can keep in touch and to give you all the details about the future workshops that we are going to be having. So on behalf of Panama TESOL and the U.S. Embassy, we really thank you for being here. I think Fernando, which is our Panama TESOL president, is going to give some closing words. So, Fernando?
Thanks, Monica. Well, I just wanted to congratulate everybody and give the huge thanks and capital letter to all of you for being here every day, and even for those who have not been um, active in sessions, but then they visit the YouTube channels. That's been a great hit, actually, one of the greatest. I would say, Juan Carlos. And thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Dennis. I think Dennis is somewhere backstage, but
Yes.
thanks a lot for always taking TESOL into consideration. I think we've made a great team, and we'll continue uh, stronger in the future. So I'm glad to see all of you, and thank you very much for all your contributions. We'll continue working hard on offering these kinds of things in the coming future. So thanks a lot on behalf of Panama Teasels, like she said, and well, she's gonna be the next president, so you better get used to that face. Thanks a lot,
Yes.
and we'll see you soon.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Fernando. And we have some other words from Juan Carlos, who is actually very much responsible for the success of these workshops. So he does not like to be the face, but please, if you're there, he really deserves a big, big applause from everyone here. So thank you very much, Juan Carlos. Do you have any closing words that you would like to give?
Well, thank you so much for everything. Yeah, well, I cannot thank you enough. Thank you, Jeff, Monica, Fernando. Thank you to all the participants. Yeah, you made this possible. So we are super excited. And somebody was asking about the next webinar. Well, I just sent a link to our distribution list. So please join it. We'll let you know when the next webinar is going to take place. In addition, please subscribe to your YouTube channel, yeah, so you can be in touch and get access to all these opportunities. Um, well, I don't know. I'm wordless, actually. So it's been a total success. This is just, we are just warming up, okay? Thank you.
That's
Jeff?
very good. Well, thank you very much. Thank you, Jeff, for the time and energy you have put in this workshop. I know that it's going to keep everyone interested and motivated for a while. And remember that sharing is caring, and the workshops are here and they're recorded. So if you want to go back and check them out, or if you want to share them with your colleagues, they are there. So thank you very much, everyone, and see you soon. Bye.
Bye,
Bye
everyone.
bye.
Bye.